Welcome to St Ives School of Painting's How-To series. Short lessons taken from our longer online courses, designed to help you build confidence and skills in drawing and painting, one focused exercise at a time.
This is Kelly, our model for today, and really I started drawing just by looking at the subject and look for big simple shapes that kind of you could fit the whole pose into. That's what I'm really looking for. And looking at the pose here, I mean, for me there's a kind of quite obvious geometrical shape that the figure fits pretty perfectly, which is a triangle, almost an equilateral triangle, I would say. So I'm actually going to start by drawing that. So for those who don't quite see what I'm talking about, if you look, say, from the wrist of the hand on the left, the supporting arm, there's a kind of straight line up to the top of the head, the bun where her hair is kind of tied back on the top of the head. There's almost a straight line running right the way through to there. And then there's a kind of straight line running from the top of the head, that bun, from the same point, down to the front of the foot that's raised, the leg that's raised. And similarly, there's another line, another straight line, that joins that last point of the foot of the raised leg to the wrist of the supporting arm. So those three lines kind of encapsulate pretty much all of the figure, almost all, and it's a really simple shape to draw. What we can do to make that shape, to get that fairly accurate, is to measure the angles of those lines. To do this, we need a straight edge. So the traditional way of doing this, you often see artists doing, is to hold your pencil out at arm's length, and you rotate your wrist until your pencil lines up with the line you're looking at. So you can see here that I've got the pencil, and it's lined up from the wrist to the bun on the back of the head. And that in itself is kind of useful, because it gives us a kind of more concrete sense of what that angle is. We can actually use that more effectively by transferring it to our drawing. So if keeping my arm straight and without moving anything of my upper body, so I don't move my arm, my neck, my head, my eye, I'm looking through one eye, just swing from the waist, from the hips, swing that across to my drawing. Okay? Now that gives you a sense. You can see, hopefully at home, you can see that my pencil, the line of my pencil there, is pretty much parallel to that line that I'm looking at in the figure. Yeah? Obviously, I want to draw that, and now I've taken the line away, my pencil away, and I've kind of lost that. So certainly I think to start with, it's not a bad idea to actually use a strip of paper like this. And actually to use it with both hands. So hold it out, both arms straight. This is important because most people struggle with this the first few times they do it, and it's often because they don't straighten their arms. And what happens is, if you don't straighten your arms, you tend to lose the angle as you move across. So you can see, if I jerk across here, that angle has been lost. So it's really important to move slowly and carefully, just moving from the hips, and bring that across. And then I can draw in a line. Okay? So this is really really useful just to get the relationship between the wrist and the top of the head. Now I don't know where, I haven't decided yet where the top of the head is going to be or the wrist is going to be. What I would usually do is have a look at some of the other angles. So I'm going to maybe decide for the moment that the top of the head is here. So that would line me up then to look at the second line, which is from the top of the head down to the ankle, or I could go to the toe. The main thing with this is to, when you're measuring these lines, to go from very clear, obvious points. So you don't want to pick a point kind of in the middle of something, or something that isn't really well defined, because that becomes very unreliable as a kind of navigation aid. So I'm going to bring that angle across. I'm going to put that down. Oops, there. Now you can see I wobbled a bit at the end there. I think I've actually lost that angle in transferring it, and that's really common. It's really easy to do that. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to measure it again. I'm going to do this one-handed, I think. Yeah, so I can see that my first angle was a little bit steeper than it should be, and I'm going to correct that. Now, being able to measure the angle, measure and transfer the angle of an arm or a leg or any line really, is very, very useful. This technique becomes extremely powerful when you combine that with a little bit of simple high school geometry, which is triangulation. Because one of the rules of geometry is that any two triangles which have the same internal angles will have exactly the same proportions. So just a minute, I'll show you what I mean. So if you have a triangle like that, if you make another triangle inside that, those two lines are parallel to each other, so that means that angle is the same as that angle is the same as that angle, and that is a common angle between the two triangles. The proportion of that one, ADE, will be exactly the same as ABC. Those two triangles are exactly the same proportions, not the same size, the same proportions. So if I see a triangle in my subject and I can transfer the angles, and my triangle here is the same angles, has the same angle, internal angles as my triangle there that I'm seeing, the triangle here will have exactly the same proportions as the triangle I'm seeing. So that would mean that I would have those relationships between the top of the head, the foot, and the wrist here. I would have that relationship accurate. So to complete that initial measurement, what I need to do is look at the relationship between the toe here and the wrist. So I'm just going to complete my triangle. Now, when I do this, I have several options. So I've put that line in there. That means my drawing is actually going to be quite small. I'm not really using the paper as well as it. I've got a lot of empty space here. If I want to make that drawing bigger, at this stage, I can shift that line down, as long as I make sure that I don't change the angle here. I can shift that down to there. And again, that triangle is the same proportion as that triangle. So I could just then rub out, I'm going to rub out that squiggle I got it wrong. So I'm going to work, so my drawing's going to be a little bit bigger than that initial one. Okay, so from that point, I can kind of work out to pretty much any other point I want to look at. So I'm going to start with a big shape. So there's a series of kind of triangles here. Maybe I often look at points which are kind of midway, so something that's kind of midway here or midway here or midway here. Maybe I'm going to look at, say, where the elbow might be. The elbow seems to kind of come midway between the top of the head and the foot there. So one way to find that is to actually use the reference points I've already got here and actually triangulate from them. So to look at the angle from there to the elbow and there to the elbow. And if I've got that, then I might just check by checking the angle from the top of the head. So let's have a look at that. So wrist to elbow. Oops. Well, actually, I did guess that pretty accurately. When I just sketched that in, it was actually a pretty good angle. So I'm kind of confident that the elbow is somewhere along that line.
Want more tips, tricks and inspiration? Each of the short lessons are taken from one of our full courses in our extensive online library. We have over 100 courses available for you to watch on demand. Visit our website to find out more and hit subscribe for more creative inspiration.